So, there's one lesson I already knew but only managed to put into action in 2024, and it literally changed my life. It's also the reason why I closed on my agency. Now, I'm running a business in Germany where I help German founders get a government grant for their business to make their life easier. And while I do that, I'm living a life that I probably would have considered my dream life 15 years ago. The dream was always to be financial, time and location flexible, which now is obviously a very great thing, to connect with other entrepreneurs, to being able to work online like anywhere you want, and also obviously spend the time the way you want it to, even if that means going surfing in the morning, during the day, or in the evening, obviously doing other stuff or spending time with friends or family. But this wasn't always the case for me. Quite the opposite, I would say. There was a lot of things happening growing up, and that's why it's even more important for me to try to give you a better understanding of the lesson I learned this year in 2024, and hopefully it saves you some time and gets you closer to your goals as well. But first, I quickly have to adjust to the sun coming out in Cape Town. So the lesson I'm talking about might seem simple and obvious, but it's kind of difficult to get it right. But once you get it right, at least that's what happened for me, you have more time and you actually make more money. So I naturally get lost in ideas. Like, I have a lot of ideas, I become super creative, and I like to think and work out the details of things, which, don't get me wrong, has a reason to be there. It's just not the most efficient way to tackle a task, or especially if you're running a business or trying to grow a business, it's most definitely not going to be the highest return on investment and not your quickest way to grow. Especially when you're building your own thing, it is very attractive. You don't want to leave room for error, especially when other people are looking towards it or on it, that you want to be super perfectionist with everything. But if you're the head of the company or trying to grow something, then it's probably most likely not the most efficient way to grow your business or actually get off the ground. And I also liked to focus on the things that I already was very good at, and not thinking or trying to do new stuff that probably would have pushed the business forward. And the first time, or actually all of the time, when I heard people talk about how you actually need to prioritize on specific tasks to actually get these tasks done, I was like, sure, I know what I'm doing. I'm on this path, and it's very much in the comfort zone, where I just wasn't really paying attention and was just like, no, I think this is the priority task, while I was certainly knowing it kind of isn't. But to a fair reason, because I wasn't always thinking about what's the highest return on investment, meaning what I put in and what do I get out from a task. So I never thought about that there's a possibility that there's tasks I can do that don't just give me like a tiny increase on my business or move me forward a tiny bit, but actually put me into a different place when it comes to the business. So the biggest lesson this year that I managed to implement into my life and into my business is prioritizing the right task. And by prioritizing, I don't just mean saying this is my most important task and then you do other stuff as well. Like prioritizing the task, meaning this is the next chapter that I want to go into, and all these tasks below are the number one priority tasks. So right now, if you think about you want to get your first customer, for example, if you haven't started your business yet, you want to start with creating an offer first. You don't want to think about, okay, do I need the perfect logo? Do I need the perfect website? What fifth column on my About Me page on my website should be the text? Like, that doesn't matter to get you from not having a business to signing your first clients to actually make money or to sell your first product. While I'm not saying it won't improve the business, it's more the thought of it won't get you your first client by adding this section. Instead, you should probably focus on setting up the basics. If you have a website, people need to see it. And then obviously obvious thing is just talking about it to people, making sure more people know what you're offering, and then creating a small habit around catching yourself off guard when you're thinking too creatively or too much about an idea or the next step, because this is the habit that you'll need to get into, understanding you as the driving factor in the business or in the company where you need to focus. And an easy way to understand it is literally just writing everything down in a list, like a normal list. Ideally, you probably have some sort of management system to write down your task or what you have to do. and then seeing how will this actually make me money, and if you can predict how much money or how much more money it will make you, writing that behind it. And therefore you can literally see which one is the number one priority task for you right now, which has the biggest lever. And depending in which state of your business you are, there might be priority tasks that have the biggest lever now or the biggest lever in the future, but you then just have to decide, okay, which one is more important for me. You can also write that behind it, but normally you would know if you don't make a lot of money, you should focus on the now and actually start making money now so you can use that and then put it into the future. So you make money now and then can put it into the future, or the long-term highest return on investment task where you then can actually focus on. So depending on the situation I'm in, if I need to make money now, I obviously then focus on the tasks that will make me money soon. Whereas if the longer you are in business, or the longer your time scope is in terms of like how much money you need to run the business, or how much money you can invest into the business or want to invest into the business, you can then obviously prioritize tasks that are even higher return on investment, but not maybe in the next couple of weeks, rather in the next couple of months or even years. You can also put it into a way easier framework, just thinking about what is my goal right now and which of these tasks will bring me the closest to my goal today. And if you have day-to-day business, just chunk out the time before or after the day-to-day business where you only focus on this task and nothing else. And as the entrepreneur in the business, by pushing these tasks forward, you're actually setting the limit higher for your business. Unless you have other people in the business that do it for you. But early on, that's definitely one thing where you set and rise the bar constantly. And by setting and rising the bar constantly, you most likely will make more money. And with that money, you can actually hire people below you that then take care of all the creative side tasks or more the detailed side tasks that will then be also obviously optimizing the business. But you're always just pushing and using the highest leverage task to drive the business. And for me, it was so important because the further you get and the bigger you grow, the more tasks will appear. And also the more things you learn, the more tasks will appear as well. Meaning at the end of the day, you will never ever have enough time to do everything you want if you're somewhat creative, especially if you're somewhat creative or have a lot of ideas. It's impossible. You don't have the time in the world to do that. So what I'm focusing on is just driving the business forward as much as I can to get the resources, meaning money, most circumstances, to then get more labor or have more employees, getting on the business, and then just driving down the idea, making a strategy and just the vision, and then slowly have that building starting to come together. I did this because I like to think of it as like a triangle where I'm the centerpiece pushing the pole up, and then having the other people or everything else being lifted on the side as well. Meaning the sides will be employees, will be money, or anything that will help me, except me spending time on these tasks, grow the thing. And therefore everything I do on the left or the right side down, which isn't the centerpiece, I think about it as cost. Or in terms of business, if I'm not utilizing that at all times, I'm not being good at my job. But at the end of the day, we're all very much just humans. And a big factor why this can be difficult is because it's just very, very fucking uncomfortable. Because sometimes or most of the time it will mean you're choosing a task that you haven't done before, a topic that you haven't had any experience in, or just something else where it's just uncomfortable to be in that position. But once you get the hang of it and you actually understand where the most important tasks are and you see it very clearly, I think you just become very good at identifying, okay, what are actually important tasks over time with experience. Because, you know, if I do this, you see growth, and if I do other stuff, you see less growth. So therefore, you will naturally get an understanding or a better understanding of what's a good or a priority task or potential priority task and what's not. And therefore, once you have your first employees, freelancers, or agencies, you can pretty much give these priority tasks way better to them. And that's literally when you start growing at a pace that you haven't seen before. One thing also that's very important is sometimes if you have a task, you can't push it all at once. So it means you have to do something now, then do something tomorrow, or have to wait a couple days. Obviously, therefore, you can then see what next priority tasks are on the list and then tackle these in between. Or if you're very strategically already set up, then you see what your current priority number one task is and then think about what the next task would be number one once the first one is done. So thinking about, okay, what would be the next step once I get this done, because you're on the way and you have the time. And to come back to the topic why I've shut down my agency in 2024, which made me very comfortable money, is because I knew I had to prioritize one business. Obviously, when I shut down my agency, the other business was already running, but I did it at a time where I was still thinking about if it's the right decision, because I could have pushed my agency longer. But in hindsight, ending it or shutting it down at that time probably helped me increasing the business or growing the business way further in hindsight, because I shut it down as early. And therefore, the sooner you can make these decisions for you, and also the sooner you can identify and actually do these tasks and put so much priority on it, because for me it meant obviously talking to all the clients, creating offboardings, making sure they're still set up even though I'm not helping them anymore. It was a time factor, but I was like, if I keep this pushing out, the time will always be there, and the further you do it or the later you do it, it will have the higher, almost exponential higher cost at the end, because the time I will have to sacrifice at some point, sacrifice of use. And by doing that this early, I set the right task on priority at the right time. I spent the time doing all the offboarding, but therefore I had more time to grow and scale the new business. Anyways, to wrap this up, there is obviously a lot of tasks you have to do during the day, and it's not always a clear path. And there's probably things that I am currently doing that are not technically the number one priority task that I am doing, but that's because of knowledge or just like the understanding of something. That's learning as well. So I think the sooner you can get the framework into your head and actually see, okay, what will make me the most business? And I think a big factor is also just understanding to what degree you have to finish a task until you can jump to the next chapter and actually push it forward. That's a big habit you can create, and that will always, or in my opinion, will always benefit you in a good way, and will probably also get you closer to your current goal. And if you feel like it, just write down your goal in the comments, and also your number one priority task that you think is there right now. And maybe at some point you'll come back and see, hopefully it was the right one, or maybe it was something else.